Last time, the squad found their way back to Grimgar, but what has Ronta and Yume been up to? Level 14.5. Things cannot remain the same. At this point, it's been roughly 3 years since Ronta cut ties with the squad and escaped from Forgan, and he is currently very hungry with his eyes fixated on his prey. He sneaks into the barn where he searches for a pen filled with birds. He grabs one and beats a retreat, however on the way out he passes a pen filled with slaves who alert the owners to Ronta's presence. Though these untrained orcs are ants compared to the great Ronta, so he is easily able to escape. Shortly after killing and cooking the bird, he notices a sickly-looking slave hiding in the bushes. Ronta kindly shares his food with the slave just before hearing a dog coming toward them. They attempt to run away, but only make it a short distance before Ronta stops to effortlessly remove the dog's head from its shoulders. He then knocks away 2 arrows as a third flies past him, planting itself in the slave's chest. Ronta then knocks away more arrows before lunging forward, severs an arm, steals a sword, kills a foe, throws said sword into another enemy, then turns back to finish off the first orc. He then tends to the slave's wound and hoists him onto his back to set out once again. Though their journey together is a short one, as Ronta is forced to bury his friend and cut a notch into his mask as remembrance. He then heads into town, enters a tavern, and purchases a drink for the dark elf sitting next to him. This elf, named Wezzel, immediately realizes that Ronta is human, and Ronta realizes that the elf is being targeted. Wezzel then says that they will continue this conversation after he takes a short walk outside. Ronta exits the tavern and follows from a safe distance and watches 2 orcs gang up on and push Wezzel to the ground. Ronta immediately jumps into the fray, swiftly cutting down the first orc. He then trades blows with the second, but decides it's best to exhaust away and try some magic, which he uses to weaken his opponent and buff himself, making this an easy victory. He then looks down to see Wezzel sheath a menacing-looking dagger, followed by him agreeing to travel with Ronta. Together, they continue south, stopping to take shelter in a cave, where Ronta learns that Wezzel is headed for the Shadow Forest. The Shadow Forest is a place containing a village of elves, however Wezzel is not exactly welcomed in said city. He then explains that the No Life King Alliance is planning to start a war, and are marching toward the Shadow Forest as they speak. Eventually they reach their destination where they almost immediately get lost. Luckily though, Wezzel has an ancient elven ritual that will show them the way. He sits down and begins meditating and ceremoniously cutting himself as Ronta stands guard. 2 entire days pass, and Ronta notices a presence behind him. He springs backwards, attacking a tree person who blocks his katana and counters with its vines. They seem to be evenly matched, however Ronta's sword is unable to pierce the wood, forcing him to resort to his trump card.
Demon Call.
Zodiac spontaneously appears and effortlessly uses his demon scythe to bisect their enemy. Wezzel then awakens from his trance as a glowing path appears before them. They travel for more than a day when Ronta looks up to notice that Wezzel is missing. He bats away an arrow as he is immediately surrounded by elves, followed by a gorgeous female shaman capturing and knocking him out. He comes to in a cramped jail cell, giving him time to recollect on the past and reaffirm that his current goal is to see her smile once again. Suddenly, an almost familiar-looking elf approaches him, saying that the forest is under attack and that she was sent here to release him. Ronta grabs his belongings and follows the girl through the city to group up with her parents. Wezzel explains that he loved this woman but had no idea that she was pregnant when he left. The 3 of them descend from the treetops to the ground, where Ronta notices and attacks a hidden enemy. He goes all out on the offensive as this ninja deflects the attacks before escaping by climbing a tree. Ronta then hears wolves howling in the background as Zodiac is summoned once again. He prepares for battle and reassures Leia that she's cute and will grow up to be strong, all the while a man with only 1 arm approaches. This man then chases after Wezzel and his family, however Ronta and Zodiac isn't going to allow that to happen. Takasagi then shouts with a mix of excitement and anger as he finally realizes who this opponent is. Now on to Yume's story, level 14.5, If I Could Meet You Again. Shortly after leaving the squad, Yume set out on a journey with Momo to cross the open ocean to visit the Red Continent. However, along the way, they got caught up in a massive storm and a monstrous wave swept them overboard. Luckily, they managed to grab a hold of a piece of debris and drifted through the ocean for roughly a week before washing up on this uninhabited island. Now, it's been more than 2 years since then, and Yume has spent each and every day learning Kung Fu from Momohina. Of course, today is no different, and we find them in the middle of a sparring match. This battle is a furious whirlwind of punches and kicks, which ends with Yume lying breathless and naked on the ground. It's the following morning that Yume wakes up to see Momo on the beach doing her morning stretches. This isn't anything new, however, behind her on the horizon is a tiny speck that wasn't there the day before. Yume struggles to force the word out, and Momo takes off swimming to get a better view. For whatever reason, the sailors on that ship end up coming to the island, and this little boat contains 5 people from the Red Continent who all attack the girls on sight. The Kung Fu masters obtain a
flawless victory
and are taken to the ship to negotiate with the captain. That being said though, the sailors speak an entirely different language and end up attacking the girls once again. Yume and Momo proceed to beat the shit out of 30+ men before they convince the crew to take them westward and only have to put down 1 mutiny along the way. Then after arriving at the Coral Archipelago, the crew gathers some reinforcements only to be beaten down yet a 3rd time. Momo spots a K&K ship at the docks and proceeds to dropkick one of its sailors overboard. She hesitates slightly upon seeing Kisaragi before running full speed to embrace him. They board the Bakuro's Go and set sail for the Emerald Archipelago, giving Yume time to think about the squad and about how she broke her 6-month promise. They complete the voyage without incident, quickly resupply, and set sail for Grimgar. It's during one of these boring days that she spots an extremely dashing and chiseled young man, making her heart skip a beat. She feels like she's seen him before, and upon getting closer, she recognizes this masterpiece as Renji. He actually apologizes, saying that he was wrong to call the squad weak, and he reassures her that Haruhiro is still alive and waiting for her. Next, Yume bumps into Ron, who after a very awkward conversation about him finding her sexy, asks her to leave Renji alone because he's still grieving over Sasa, who died on the Red Continent. It's near the end of this journey that Yume has her final showdown with Momo. She's fought her teacher countless times and is more than confident in her ability to hold her own. The match begins and it's a total one-sided onslaught. Yume doesn't even recognize Momo's fighting style, which quickly beats her into submission. After the match, Momo praises Yume and explains that this was her final lesson, which is to always be ready to adapt to the unexpected. The ship then arrives at a native village which treats Kisaragi and in turn all of them like family. They stay one night and see Yume and Renji off the next day with a few gifts for their trek back home. Yume plus Renji squad make their way to Alterna, where they are met by an abundance of guards. Renji leads the way to the Red Moon office, where Brittany explains that war is upon them. He then says that Haru squad is still MIA, which causes Yume to zone out and leave the office. She ends up making her way to the Hunters Guild and finds the master that trained her. This tearjerking touching reunion is suddenly cut short as flaming arrows begin raining down all around them. Orcs and undead are already swarming the streets, and Yume notices a pack of wolves coming her way. She stabs one in the neck, punches a second, dodges 2 more, then kicks away another as she shoots an arrow into an oncoming orc. She continues evading and shooting until her quiver is empty, leaving her with no choice but to pick up a curved sword. The battle continues, and eventually she is reduced to nothing more than her dagger as the enemies completely surround her. She prepares to break through the encirclement when
this one is mine.
Takasagi approaches, saying that Yume would one day be a very famous soldier. That is, if she wasn't about to die. He attacks and Yume narrowly dodges, realizing that she stands absolutely no chance against this opponent. She drops her knife and silently says her goodbyes to the squad before charging straight at Takasagi for a high-risk, high-reward maneuver. She watches as his blade turns into a blur and arcs for her shoulder, though a mystery man arrives just in time to deflect the attack, forcing Takasagi backwards. He keeps up this flurry of blows until Takasagi loses his balance, falling to the ground. Yume then watches as Ronta squats down. "Hey old man, why are you taking a break?" Before you go, here's an important update regarding this video series. As of book 17, the story of Grimgar is still ongoing, however the physical English copies is only up to volume 15. That means we only have one more of these videos before the series will have to go on hiatus. Just so you're aware, the plan is to possibly finish Rokka Braves of the Six Flowers, then move on to Classroom of the Elite. Personally, I just really wanted to say thank you for the loyal support throughout this series, and that I invite you to join me on the next one. Then a big shout out and thank you to Fyrex726, who has supported me on Patreon for over 1 year.